What is going on, party people, and welcome to episode 16 of the Whatnauts Review Show, where each week we pick something new to talk about, whether it be a comic book, movie, TV show, anime, manga, or more. We read it, we watch it, we do what we have to do, we come back here, and we talk about it. My name is Kyle Springer, and along with me for the ride, I have Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing great, Kyle. How are you this morning?
I am doing pretty well. Woke up maybe about an hour ago. I ate, and I'm looking outside, and it looks really nice. I think I'm gonna go see a movie this afternoon. So
awesome! That's what I did last night.
I think it should be a good day.
Yeah,
oh, nice. What did you go see?
It was storming really bad. I was gonna go see that outdoor theater we have here, but the weather was so rough. Instead, we just gave up and we went to the movies, and I finally saw Incredibles 2.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Now you can go listen to our Incredibles 2 spoiler cast, which is out on the Reactor Core. If you guys want to go look that up, or at thewhatnauts.com. Sweet. I think I'm gonna try and go see that the Sorry to Bother You movie with I forget the guy's name, but he's a fantastic actor, and I see him in a whole bunch of stuff. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Lakeith Stanfield is Sorry to Bother You. It looks funny, and I've heard good things, so I'm excited. But this week we are not talking about movies that we saw recently. We're going to be talking about Star Wars Rebels Season 1. And I'm super excited. I really love this show.
Awesome.
So good. And I hope you think it's as good as I think it is. I've seen, I think, the first 2 seasons, so I'm even behind on where the show is now. And I need to catch up. So I think restarting season 1, like we did this past week, is going to be my, I'm just going to continue watching it and get caught up. Because where I left off, there was some big moments, and I want to know what happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, Star Wars Rebels Season 1. General impressions, Melissa. What did you think?
I liked it. It was really fun. Really solid action in some scenes. I liked the characters, and I am really interested to see how this continues and what the story points all evolve into.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting show. Let me ask you this: how big of a Star Wars fan are you? Are you like crazy Star Wars fan number 1? Do you not care? Are you somewhere in the middle?
I didn't really watch Star Wars growing up. My dad was a Trekkie.
How dare you?
Yeah, I'd seen all of the movies, I think, at one point when I was a kid, and it wasn't until when The Force Awakens came out a couple years ago that I'm like, okay, I should try and brush up on Star Wars. I want to at least be able to interact with other big Star Wars fans when we talk about this giant piece of the pop culture landscape. So now I've seen all the movies, I think, at least twice each. I've seen the Star Wars Holiday Special a couple times.
I'm so sorry.
I got the Riff Tracks version of it, so it comes with professional jokes laid over it, which is probably the only way to get through the whole thing, and those jokes are really great. And so I watch that every Christmas.
Oh God.
Or every Life Day, I guess. I should respect the Wookiee culture.
Every Life Day.
And yeah, that's about where I'm at. I got this book. I think I mentioned it last week. This is a book for kids. It's a child's...
Okay.
It's a child's coffee table book that's just fun facts about Star Wars. It's one of those educational books you'd get when you were a kid that's this is everything about castles. This is everything about sharks. It's
kind of like an encyclopedia, but not really.
Yeah, so...
But it's just it's a fun Star Wars book.
So I bought this, okay, I need to approach Star Wars at the level of a child.
For those of you listening to this as a podcast and not watching the video version that's on YouTube, Melissa just held up a Star Wars book, and it was actually called Everything You Need to Know About Star Wars. Because, podcasting is a visual medium.
Yeah, my big shiny coffee table book for children. So I have at one time read a lot of things about Star Wars, but we're going to see how much information my brain has actually retained.
There you go. Cool. So my Star Wars fan journey thing is I was always very super casual with them. It was like, yeah, I liked them. It was just kind of one of those things. Yeah, just you watched Star Wars because that's what everyone did, and that was it. And it wasn't until I started watching the Clone Wars cartoon that I really got into it, because the prequel movies came out when I was really young, and I went and I saw all of those in theaters. And I liked them well enough at the time because I was a little kid and I didn't know any better. I was just like, lightsabers! But yeah, then, so I moved out to Texas for a year. I took a year off of school and I moved out to Texas. And I ended up getting a job, and my coworker was a huge Star Wars nerd. He knows all sorts of stuff and can just list off facts and well, in this book they did this and that, this and that, and then it ties in with these comics and they did, and so he was trying to get me more into Star Wars, and I finally started watching the Clone Wars cartoon, and something about that cartoon, it finally clicked in my head. I was like, this is awesome. I really like Star Wars. This is so cool. Because the whole thing with the stupid trade federations and all of that stuff that no one likes. I mean, that stuff all went over my head. But then seeing the actual Clone Wars cartoon, and it's a cartoon. It's meant for kids. So they have to explain everything as if they're talking to kids. And so here's dumbass me sitting there I don't understand. Oh, okay. I get it now. But yeah, despite it being a cartoon, and to some people that might equate to, it's watered down. It actually really wasn't. There was a lot of really awesome character moments in the 6 seasons that they had there. And in fact, Ahsoka is now my all-time favorite Star Wars character, and she's fantastic. But that show ended up getting canceled when Disney bought Lucasfilm, but they were already way into production of season 6, so Cartoon Network couldn't air all of that stuff. So Netflix picked it up, and season 6 of the Star Wars Clone Wars was a Netflix. I don't know if it's considered a Netflix original, but it was a Netflix exclusive.
Cool.
That's where it aired. But yeah, so then that show wrapped up, and then Star Wars Rebels was the first cartoon that they made under the Disney, the guiding hand of Disney. And I don't know, I was real skeptical at first, because when the first trailers started coming out in the first artwork, I was like, this looks extra Disney. They took the artwork from the Clone Wars and just not completely redid it. It was still the same style, but there was just this added Disneyfication to it. and you were following this main character who looked a lot like Aladdin, and that's exactly what he was. They even call him a street rat.
Yeah, that's the first thing I wrote down in my notebook is Riff Raff Space Rat, I don't buy that.
Riff Raff Space Rat, I don't buy that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. But yeah, like that was the whole thing. I was like, this is just gonna be Aladdin in space. Like he's gonna find some Princess Jasmine, and it's just gonna be that. I was like, this is gonna be so stupid. And I want to say like a month or two before the first episode aired, they released that first chase scene. And yeah, I was like, this is Aladdin. This is Aladdin. I'm so disappointed. As much as I love Aladdin, no, this is not what I want from Star Wars. And season 1 ended up coming out, and I think I watched the first like 2 or 3. I think they released like the first 2 or so episodes back to back. I know that first one was an hour long. It was like 40 something minutes. And then the second one after that, I think they released those within like that first week. So I watched that and I was like, okay, it's not that bad. Still don't know how I feel about Space Aladdin Ezra. Whoever this guy is. Who does he think he is? Huh? But yeah, I fell off because I didn't have cable. But then my the one coworker who I guess former coworker, by the time this show came out, I was back here in Richmond and back in school. But he had cable, and he let me use his, I guess, like cable sign in to do like, hey, I can watch live TV on my computer anywhere I am thing. So I signed into Disney XD and I binge watched that whole first season in like a day. And I was like, this is actually really good. I love this. This is so good. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. That's what this show is. It starts out as Space Aladdin. And then it starts to go into some really, really cool places. Ezra, who is the main character that we follow, gets kind of tangled up with this band of rebels fighting against the Empire because they have recently taken over. This is shortly after, Star Wars nerds are going to hate me, I believe it's Order 66 is what they call it, where Darth Vader was like, hey, go kill all the Jedis. And I guess maybe he was still Anakin at that time, hadn't really become Darth Vader exactly. Or it's well, no, because in the third he. Anyways, so it's after Order 66. If I'm not mistaken, I heard this was taking place. I want to say 5 years before the events of A New Hope.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I could probably look that up on Wikipedia or something, but I don't have. I guess I have my phone. I can look it up as we talk. But yeah, so it's right before A New Hope. The rebels are still kind of banding together. They haven't really united yet, which means this also takes place again like 5 years before the events of Rogue One. But yeah, so we see some rebels fighting against the Empire. Ezra is a Force-sensitive kid, and the leader of the rebels that he gets tangled up with, Kanan, is also a Jedi, or a former Jedi. And there's some dark, mysterious stuff going on in his past, too, that he hints on. So yeah, I think this show is really, really fantastic. One thing that I loved about this show that we will get into more once we get into spoilers, is that they start to dive into what happens if a Jedi goes wrong, or a Jedi goes bad. Which, of course, we all know Darth Vader, and that story, but he's not the only one to have done that, and we usually don't get their stories. Hey, we have someone in the chat, I'm just not sure, says, hey guys. So hi, how are you?
Hi.
But so it's neat to see kind of Ezra's story and him being taught by Kanan, who was this former Jedi who may not have done things exactly right. So yeah, I mean, what was there anything you kind of want to add to general plot stuff before we dive in to?
Yeah. Just to fill out the rest of the cast, Kanan is partners with this woman named Hera, who is the pilot of the ship.
Okay. And
there's also Zeb, who's the muscle. Yeah. He's some sort of big lemur man. And Hera is a Twi'lek.
Yes.
I remembered what they're called. And then there's a girl named Sabine, who is a Mandalorian. She's got one of the cool Boba Fett helmets, but it's pink. And she's an artist.
Yep.
And that's... Oh, and there's a droid, of course. You gotta have a droid.
Chopper.
His name is Chopper, and he is orange.
Yep. There you go. I'm just not sure in the chat asks, is Solo worth it? So before we dive into Star Wars Rebels 1, I say yes. It's not super important overall to the thing. It's literally just Han Solo's origin story. But I liked it. I had a lot of fun going to watch it. We also do have a episode of the Reactor Core on the Whatnauts.com all about Solo. So if you do go see it, you guys, you can have a discussion, a Star Wars discussion from us. But yeah, I had a lot of fun watching it, so it was good. That being said, do you want to dive into spoiler stuff for Star Wars Rebels Season 1?
Yes.
So yeah, where do you want to start? Do you want to get into more of your I guess not general thoughts, but more specific general thoughts? Or was there something that stood out that you want to start?
Yeah, I want to talk about the character dynamics among the crew, because that's what I was looking for the most, and we got some really great stuff, but I know it's still building. To compare it to Firefly, I was waiting for that Out of Gas episode where we would learn how everybody else became part of this crew. It's Ezra joining this crew, and we don't really know how that crew was a crew before he even got there. And I wanted to know that so much. And we didn't get it yet, but I know it's got to be on the way, and I'm excited.
Yeah, you start to learn a little bit more about their backstories and stuff. And side note, the cinematography in Solo, I thought it was fine for the most part. I don't think as much as I didn't like Episode 8 that just happened. The cinematography in that was gorgeous.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's again, last thing on this Solo stuff. It's fun. It's a good action film. It's a good heist film. If that's something you want to check out, I say it's worth it. But overall plot, like how much it'll affect the Star Wars universe as a whole, not much. There is a twist in there that you'll kind of know if you've seen the Clone Wars and seen a lot of Rebels, but I won't go any more into that. But yeah, so you wanted to talk about the character dynamic. You were hoping to see backstory.
Yeah.
was there a certain character that you really wanted to know more about in specifics?
I could tell that that Hira and Kanan were some sort of an item, and they never really went into exactly what their relationship to each other was. Like, she'll call him dear every once in a while, and like they hug at the end, and that's it. And I can tell there's probably something there about, like, no, a Jedi can't get involved. A Jedi can't have anything else in his heart except for, you know, the fight for justice and peace. And I can't have a relationship with you. Like, I know it's probably something like that, but, like, tell me. Don't make me guess about it.
Well, okay, so let's dive in. Let's start talking about Kanan, because he's a very interesting character. So we mentioned this is after Order 66. Most of the Jedi are dead at this point. That, however, does not mean that Force-sensitive people aren't still out there. And that, you know, as we learn down the road with all the new Star Wars movies, like, there are more Force-sensitive people out there. But there are some people who were Jedi at one point. We know Obi-Wan is still alive. We know... your camera froze. There we go. We're back. Kind of.
I'm back. I got out of that carbonite.
There you go. But, so he was... He was being trained to be a Jedi, but we get hints that it's very possible that he wasn't actually ever a Jedi.
Yeah, he didn't get very far before his master was attacked. You know, we're gonna get rid of all the Jedi, and she's like, no, run, like, you save yourself.
And you said it yourself, he had a master, which...
Yeah.
If... I mean, you know, you can still refer to your master as master, even if you are a master yourself. But that's one of those things that kind of hints at this guy wasn't ever actually a Jedi master. He was only a Padawan. Like, that's all he know. Like, he never completed his training, and we see that when he's trying to train Ezra, and he's like, look, I tried to learn this stuff, and it never clicked with me, but only now when I'm teaching you, now it's starting to make sense to me, you know?
I like that dynamic a lot. I like that he's, like, absolutely not prepared to be a teacher, but he knows he has to be, and he's just gonna give it his best shot. And, like, Ezra had no idea he could ever do this, and he's been on his own for so long, he hasn't been around a family structure. I presume he has not been in any kind of school in forever. It's like, neither of them are built to be able to do this, knocks. But they're gonna
on streets.
Yeah. they're gonna try. They're gonna try. And I like their dynamic. I like that he's just his space dad. Like, there's a point where Kanan is, like, throwing rocks or something at him, and Ezra has to, like, bat him away with a lightsaber or with the Force or with something, and I just wrote, like, playing baseball with dad.
Yeah.
And, like, when Hira yells at the crew, I'm like, Mom is angry. I really liked the makeshift second family dynamic on the ship.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. If you're interested more in Kanan specifically, there are some tie-in comics about him.
Oh, cool.
Kanan the Last Jedi, I believe they are called. I think that was right when Marvel started putting them out. They did, like, a short little mini series, or it may have been an ongoing that only lasted for so long. But yeah, it's more of his backstory. So there are comics out there if you want to check those out.
Cool.
But yeah, so one of the things that the Clone Wars started to dive into, that this is now continuing, that the movies until recently hadn't really dived into, is the fact that there's more to the Force than just Jedi and Sith.
Yeah.
There is it's because I mean, you at the start, like the original movies, you get this very, very strong good versus evil dynamic, right? The Jedi versus the Sith. The Jedi are good, the Sith are bad. But then that's kind of where the prequels kind of opened it up. And then the Clone Wars especially really kind of blew the door open. Hey, thank you for the follow, Brandon Vans on Twitch.
Hi.
So yeah, there's this idea that you don't have to be either one to use the Force, right? So you have characters like Ahsoka, who quit the Jedi, and you have a character like Asajj Ventress, who used to be a Sith apprentice, but got kicked out, and she's out there, somewhere. And so, like, there's this kind of weird middle ground of they're not really good, but they're not really bad. And then you kind of start to open yourself up to this question of, are the Jedi really good? Because they were like, I mean, they're supposed to be a religion and kind of a peacekeeping force in the entire galaxy, but they've kind of sided with the Republic, and now they're the military of the Republic, basically. And so it's this weird, like, I guess the only way I know how to explain it is, or I guess a good way to explain it, apparently in some of the older comics, which technically are no longer canon.
Yeah, they're like the legacy universe or something.
Like that. There was, I haven't read them myself, but apparently there was the idea that there was an older Jedi Order before what we know now as the Jedi. And the old Jedis, I think it was even spelled differently too. It was like Jedai, or something like that. Who knows? But they were that peacekeeping force, all about balance, meaning you had to have some bad with the good. There's this kind of middle that you need to be completely balanced. And then there was like a civil war, and two more sects broke off of them. One was like, well, no, you shouldn't have bad stuff because bad is bad. Like you should
bad is bad.
Like you should be like, you should follow the light, and that became the Jedi Order that we know today, where it's like, you need to be good, you need to do all of this stuff, don't give in to your anger. And then on the opposite side was what became the Sith. Was like, no, you need to give in to all of these, stuff. Just like, don't, just live it up, so it presents the idea of the Jedi and the Sith that we know today as two extremists, like two extremist groups. I love that idea that they're both wrong. Like there is actually a balance that you should find and you need to find, But I think Star Wars Rebels really plays with that idea, because we have Kanan, who's not a full Jedi, but he's still trying to be a Jedi. And then there's Ezra, and we don't know where he's gonna end up yet, because he has a lot of anger and a lot of resentment, whether it's towards his parents or the Empire or whoever else, he's a very angry kid, So there's a lot of theories out there that Ezra ends up going to the dark side.
Ooh.
I would, to give a little bit of a spoiler warning in case you haven't seen some of the newer Star Wars, like the actual mainline movies. There is a character named Snoke. We don't know who Snoke is.
Snoke might be Ezra?
A lot of people are thinking so.
What? I have not heard this!
Yep. That's all.
But they killed Snoke.
That's all I will say on that, though.
They cut that good boy in half?
Who knows? Potentially. Or it could be someone else. We don't know. But... yeah, so, I mean, like, we don't see much of it in Season 1. You start to get more of it in Season 2. It's like, uh-oh, is he gonna go bad? But you really see, I think, him struggling with, like, what do I need to do? Why am I actually doing this? Like, he's in the temple, right? And the second question he asks is like, why am I even doing this? And Yoda, who's like guiding him, is like, that's a much better question. And I think that's what he's still trying to work out, of like, what is he doing? Why is he doing it, you know? And so I'm rambling at this point, but I think Kanan and Ezra have a really interesting relationship. Yeah. Because you mentioned that father and son stuff, but then there's all this kind of will they, won't they, not in a sexual way, but like in a, are they gonna go to the dark side? Is Ezra, you know, is he a little bit too angry? So yeah, I mean, what did you think? Did some of that stuff stick out to you?
Yeah, there's a bit in, I think, like the first or second episode where the crew has, I think they stole a bunch of that space fruit and they were giving it to the poor people of Lothal, I believe. And Ezra's just helping hand stuff out, and then one of the citizens is like, "Oh, thank you! I really expresses some gratitude." Yeah, and he's like, "I didn't do anything." And then you see him; he has like a quiet moment, and it's this moment of, "Oh, nobody's ever expressed gratitude to me before. If this is going to happen, I might as well deserve it. I might as well actually be doing something." Yeah. Like, and he's got this legacy behind him of his parents being like some of the first rebels. Like, they were just everyday people, but they really kind of put themselves out there and like started speaking up against the Empire and against these injustices, and they paid the price for it. But Ezra still lives, and he's got this sense of, I have these opportunities, I've been given these things, I need to earn them. And I need to, and now that I've got the second family, I need to like fight for them and make sure I am doing everything possible to keep them safe. Like the season 1 finale is Kanan has gotten captured, and Hera's like, we're not going back for him. Like, he made that choice to sacrifice himself for us. Yeah. We have to use what he gave us. That's what he would want us to do. Like, as much as I want to, we're not going back. And Ezra's like, nope, we have to go back. Like, I have to keep everybody together. Yeah. So I can see him going to some dark lengths to do what he thinks is a very noble thing.
It's also like Kanan is his source of understanding the power that he has.
Yeah, he's really lost without Kanan.
Because he knows if he goes to the Inquisitor, like, he's just gonna get killed right away. You know, even if he's like, train me or whatever, you know, like, they're just gonna be like, no, fuck you. And yeah, so I think it's not only like a love for a new family, but it's this idea of like, I can get what I want if I stick with him. Which I don't like. I don't think they ever like explicitly say in season 1 or explore it, but I feel like that's what's going on underneath. It's just like, if I stick with this guy, I can get what I want. Interesting. Okay, you know. So
another interesting thing about this series is the way it structures its early episodes and what it chooses to do first. like, after the initial introduction of the crew, then Ezra spends most of his time with Zeb, and I thought that was interesting that they didn't try and do, like, the mentor relationship first. It's like, nope, this is your crabby 40-year-old roommate. You're bonding with him first.
Your brother, yeah.
Yeah, and how this is arguably a series for, I imagine, preteen boys, or you know, plenty of... It's great for all ages. There's plenty of great feminine stuff in there. I love the female characters in the show, but I can imagine what they were going for first was, like, preteen boys. And there's really just Ezra. Like, he doesn't, except for that little bit of time where he's in the Empire Training Academy, and those characters will pop up every once and again after that as, like, information sources. Like, there's nobody else like him. He doesn't have any peers, and I thought that was really interesting. That he's sort of alone in his demographic. And I thought it was a neat choice that the show didn't go for, like, okay, it's just a bunch of kids. It's like, nope, there's one kid, and then, like, Sabine's maybe, like, 18 or something, and then it's, like, a bunch of adults and, like, a robot. Like, he doesn't... It's a kid show without a lot of kids in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. That's strange. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, he's very much alone. He's a lonely character. His parents are supposedly dead. He has no one. He's been by himself for 8 years, you know. And then even in his new family, the youngest one is still probably... Well, yes... Sabine is probably like 18, 19, or 20-ish. So she's like 3 or 4 years older than him, which even that age difference, like an 18-year-old girl down to a 15-year-old boy is like two separate, you know, completely different worlds. He doesn't think so, but you know, he's like, so hey, Sabine, you what are you doing this evening, you know?
I also thought it was interesting that, like, in that sort of pilot 2-part episode, he kind of has a crush on her, and then they kind of drop it, which I'm never a big fan of that, like, age difference crush that is played up for comedy in a lot of, like, kids cartoons of, like, a young boy having a crush on, like, a way cooler older girl. So I was glad to see them not do that, because it's been done enough times. You're not going to do it better than Gravity Falls did it, so, like, why try? But, like, they didn't replace it with any other really interesting dynamic. Like, he doesn't have a very specific dynamic with her after they kind of push that crush to the wayside. And I'm interested to see, like, what kind of bond they develop as the show goes on, because he's very parental with, like, with Hera and with Kanan. He does have that, like, crabby sort of comrades in arms relationship with Zeb and with Chopper, and he's not exactly in one specific place with Sabine. And I'm really interested to learn more about her and how she went through, like, training. She went through, like, an entire school program and just did as she was told, and it did not pay out for her. And, like, how she got from there to here. I'm really interested to find out about, like, what the tipping point for her was to say, okay, I have to leave behind everything I knew and strike out on my own and do this.
I mean, even just knowing what happens in Clone Wars and then hearing where, like, I was from Mandalore in the Imperial Academy, like, to me, to someone who's seen that, that's just like, oh shit, there were some things that went down there. Because Mandalore was very much like, we're not going to get involved, we're not going to do all this. And then one of my favorite story arcs in Clone Wars happens in Mandalore, and it is so good. It is so good. And
I know
you've seen Solo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know the twist at the end there of who's still alive. And so yeah, you find out that character is still alive in the Clone Wars, and he goes through some stuff, and he has some awesome arcs. It's fantastic. But at one point, he's like, I used to be a Sith apprentice, they left me. Fuck them. I'm gonna take them down.
Yeah.
And he gets his own apprentice, and he starts taking over the underworld. So like all of the like spice traders, all of the black market stuff, he starts just one by one just hitting all of the mob bosses, and he eventually ends up taking over Mandalore. Yeah, and once he kind of does that, then he's raised enough stink for Emperor Palpatine to be like, okay, I have to deal with this now. And he comes and he kills this guy's apprentice, and just again leaves him for dead, which is besides Rebels, like we see him leave like for dead. We see him in season 2 of Rebels, and then we see him in Solo, and you're just like, oh shit, what is going on here? So like my understanding of all of that is like, after Mandalore was taken over and Emperor Palpatine came and kind of fucked up all of his plans and stuff, my guess is that's when the Empire stepped in and started their academy and all of that stuff, and then that's where Sabine, who must have been a child at that time, then signs up and is like, yeah, I don't like these guys. Peace. I'm getting out of here. But yeah, so she has a really interesting past of just like, you came from Mandalore at a time when it was going through a lot of changes, a lot of turmoil and stuff. So fascinating.
Yeah, and I really like her role as an artist. Like I've said, I don't know very much about Star Wars, but I think this is the first time I've seen somebody use like non-combative, non-strategic methods of rebellion. Like she's fighting, but also like, she can do like rebellious graffiti if
Space
she wants
Banksy
to. Yeah, and I liked that aspect of it. Like that was something I hadn't seen before.
So Space Aladdin and Space Banksy walk onto a starship.
What did you think about the visuals of this show? Because the actual style it's animated in was it was distracting that like the front of their hair would move in the wind and the back of their hair would not. But I like the designs. Like, I like the actual designs of all the characters.
I'm a lot more used to it because I've seen Star Wars Clone Wars like 3 or 4 times, all the way through all 6 seasons. They've come a long way in animating stuff. So this looks fantastic compared to what season 1 of the Clone Wars looked like. But yeah, I mean there is still small stuff. It's like, the back of their hair. But do they really need to animate the back of their hair? I think the thing that stood out to me a lot in this is the lighting is usually really great. It's super fantastic. I think there's a scene when Ezra is getting onto a ship. I forget which episode it is, but it's one of the ones that has like the elevator platforms that come down, and then they hop on that and it goes back up in the ship. And I remember the first time I watched it, that scene stuck out to me. I don't even remember exactly when it is, so it didn't stick out enough, right? And it's not an important scene, but it was a scene that I looked at and I remembered the lighting is really good there. Like, holy shit, like that looks awesome. But yeah, and like same thing this watch through. It was just like, this is really cool. Like this looks really fantastic. Their expressions are really funny. A lot of times when when Ezra's in the temple and he has the vision of Kanan and the Inquisitor fighting, and they'll do like these super fast cuts to their facial expressions as they're like you know, and Kanan's facial expressions are the goofiest things in the world. He's just like it's terrible.
It's very cartoony sometimes. Sometimes it's almost like too broad, but then this is a show for like younger kids. Like I guess those classic moves, the classic like, oh, I'm embarrassed, I've like got my arm behind my head, I'm doing this to you in the camera, you know what I'm doing. That's like a kid's first introduction to this. They are kind of playing it bigger, playing it broader, like this is our teaching tool, we need to go a little slower. But yeah, I liked a lot of the little movements everybody did. There's some bit in some episode where Kanan is like sneaking up on a bad guy, like the bad guy like pokes his head out of a door or something, and then suddenly Kanan is there, and Kanan like flashes a peace sign at him and then immediately punches him, and it's so fast, and that moment is great. Surprise, it's me.
5 stars.
And I think my favorite part of the visuals was that the entire crew had like a unifying color scheme,
except for
like
Sabine.
They're all kind of in like they're all kind of in like indigo and like green and orange, and then Sabine's got that like really vivid flash of pink on her. I loved Sabine's design. She looked like a living Hot Wheels car.
Yes. That's
I thought
exactly
that was neat. Like they don't have a uniform. They're not like the X-Men or something. They're not all in like the blue or the black and the gold.
Yeah.
But it's not purposeful, but they just kind of all look similar to each other. And I just thought that was a really neat touch. Like, they didn't have to do that. And they didn't go too far in them being, like, super individualistic, like Power Rangers-y. Like, this character's color is this, and this character's color is this. Mm-hmm. And they're not, you know, like, a uniform, but they're unified. Yeah. And I liked that a lot. I feel like that was really an appropriate visual choice that went along with the story they were telling.
Yeah. What did you think of Lando?
Lando was fun. When he shows up, it kind of took me out of the story for a bit, because even not being a huge Star Wars person, like growing up, I knew all the characters in Star Wars. I still knew who they were. And whenever I'm watching a Star Wars story and some iconic character shows up and has to introduce themselves, it takes me out of the story for a bit. Like, whoa, like, I know who Lando Calrissian is. Surely you must also.
You must have heard of me.
Yeah, he was fun. I like the little inclusions of the classic characters. I feel like they didn't overdo it, but it was like just enough.
Yeah, we know at this point Obi-Wan is an old man. He's off being old man Ben, taking care of Luke. We see Senator Bail Organa, who has Leia. And yeah, we see Lando, and I guess what I didn't notice when I first watched it, because I didn't really pay attention to the card game that he's playing, but it's the same one that he's playing in Solo. It's the exact same game. They even make a pit stop to the same mining planet that they go to in Solo, which is neat. But like I really like Lando in this, because he's at the time where now he's beginning to be the character that we know. And he's starting to get mining equipment, which is basically what he's doing when he's in Cloud City. Like, he's I think he's in control of like all of Bespin, or who knows what. You guys can correct me. But yeah, because like in Solo, they're all like against this mining stuff. But then by the time we see him in the original movies, he's like in charge of this entire mining town. But yeah, like he gets that puffer pig cow looking thing, and he's like, this is gonna start me into mining. And I was just like, that's so cool. Like, this is where he starts. This is it. Right now. But yeah, that was neat. What did you think? Let's talk for a bit about the villains.
Yeah.
We get a glimpse of Darth Vader twice, once at the start and once at the end there. But for the most part, he's hired the Inquisitors to hunt down the remaining Jedi in case there aren't any more out there. Because at this point, they're so few and far between. If Darth Vader was the one going out there, he'd be wasting all of his time, right? So he's just like, all right, you go. What did you think of the Inquisitor?
He was neat. Like, I don't know if he's anything very special. Like, I feel like he's a type of villain we've seen very often before, but he's a really great execution of that. And I think it's like Agent Callus is like the guy with the crazy beard that's chasing after them. Yeah, like, I don't know if they're anything particularly original, but they're very good versions of the character types that they are playing. Yeah. And I'm interested to find out if they do have, like, cool stuff lurking around in their backstories that we'll get to find out about later.
Yeah. I don't remember if the Inquisitor actually dies there or not. I don't remember at all. But yeah, I mean, I think there are more than one Inquisitor. Like they are the Inquisition, so to speak. They're the ones like interviewing people. Where did you see the Jedi? You know, which is a big play on the Spanish Inquisition. So I think he's just more of like a throwaway, force-sensitive character, kind of loosely, hey, you're on the dark side, obviously, but you're not a Sith, per se. So that's an interesting thing. There is a weird connection that I made to because my old coworker who was big into Star Wars, I saw the Inquisitor and I was like, I wonder who he is. There's an episode in Star Wars Clone Wars where Anakin and Obi-Wan get trapped, and Ahsoka get trapped on this planet that they didn't even know existed. It's not on any map. They don't know how they got there. And the planet is occupied by 3 individuals: the father, and then like the brother and sister. And I don't remember if that's exactly what they're called, but that's along the lines of what they're called. They're not actually given names, and it's more just like the father. It seems more like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit type of thing. But they are kind of the embodiment of the Force. And long story short, the brother ends up getting out of balance and going really, really evil. And there's this whole thing of like Anakin is shown a vision of the future in which he becomes Darth Vader and kills all of the Jedi and all of that stuff. And he's like,
all those younglings.
Yeah, and he's like, no, like I would never. I mean, he's horrified that that's who he is supposed to be. And then they wipe his memory, so he doesn't remember that. But there's a scene where the brother character, as he's going on his evil rampage, like turns and looks at the camera and looks almost identical to the Inquisitor. And I paused it, took a picture, and I took a picture of the Inquisitor and I sent it to my friend. I was like, what is going on here? Something is not right, which I don't think that ever actually panned out or did things like that. But it's still just interesting.
Yeah.
Same kind of character model. But yeah, I thought the Inquisitor was menacing enough.
Yes.
Whereas it was the first season, I think they knew because they had Disney's money that they were gonna get more than one season. And so I think that idea of having Darth Vader kind of looming in the background was this, there's some bigger fish out there. There's always a bigger fish, as Qui-Gon said. And so I think that made the whole thing more menacing. Because if he was literally the only bad guy, the Inquisitor, I don't feel like it would have been good enough. Because how did you feel about the ending of this show? Or not this show, but of season 1?
I liked it. I feel like it ended exactly where it should have ended. Like, here's the big reveal. Here's the big... Like, it's interesting that they call Ahsoka the fulcrum. Because the fulcrum is like, that's what a scale balances on. If I remember my simple machines well enough from 2nd grade. She's more of like a weight. Like, on one end of the spectrum, you've got Darth Vader, and at the other end, you've got Ahsoka. Like, they're both the heavies for their respective sides. And they're kind of leading up to, like, a bigger battle. And I also like that the rebels had no idea there were other rebel cells. Like, Ezra's like, we're a cell? Did you know we're a cell?
I know we're a cell. Well, that's the thing, is Ahsoka's not a Jedi. She very well, she was kicked out and framed for murder.
What?
Yeah. And then when they realized that it wasn't her, they were like, oh shit, we're sorry. You can come back now. And she was basically like, no, fuck you guys. Like, you didn't trust me. Like, as one of your own, like, you guys screwed up big time, you know? And so she decides not to return to the Jedi, and she, like, that moment when she reveals that, she's talking to Anakin, as he's like, well, why won't you come back? And it's this super emotional moment, and it's like one of my all-time favorite moments in Star Wars history. It's so good, and it's this emotional moment of like, hey, we've been through so much together, like why can't this continue? And at the same time, they have this moment of like Anakin to Ahsoka goes like, I know you weren't the perfect Padawan. You were always kind of rebellious and did your own thing. So I understand you. And then Ahsoka to Anakin is like, I know what path you're actually going down, and I understand you, you know. And so it's just like, well, we'll go our separate ways then.
I didn't even think about that she has to, like, oh yeah, that's right, he's still her master.
She was Darth Vader's Padawan.
Yeah, oh boy, she has to go fight her sword dad.
But yeah, so I mean, her being the fulcrum is her. When I mentioned that there's this like gray area in between, that's more of what she represents. Of this, I'm not a Jedi, but I'm certainly not a Sith. I want to have that balance, and right now we're out of balance in the sense that the Empire has taken over and it's more bad than good. So she's on this side for now, but she's also not a Jedi. If that makes sense, you know. So she is there to kind of balance things out. But you're right in the sense of like, she's eventually kind of leading up to a big confrontation with her sword dad, as you put it.
Yeah, I think of all characters in terms of different forms of dads.
Sword dad. Hey there, sword dad. But yeah, like I don't know if I felt this, especially watching it again. I don't know if I really liked the finale of season 1. Again, I think it was more of the like, well, they knew they had money, so they were gonna kind of do something else, you know. It ends on a fairly happy ending. You do have the big fights with the Inquisitor, right? So I mean, there are the elements of like a good finale and stuff, right? I just don't think it hit for me. I don't think it was climactic enough. Which is I think my one complaint of this show. Like you start to like, there's this awesome family dynamics, there's awesome characters, we really want to get to know more about them, we've started to uncover this stuff and it's actually interesting and I want to know more, but then it just kind of ends in this like, okay, well, they killed the bad guy and now what? I guess they can join up with the other rebel cell, like I feel like it also could have been like, well, if they ended the show there, it's the story of how like the rebels first got started, kind of, or like how, you know, how one, like you follow one cell, but yeah, I don't know, it was a little bit lackluster for me. I don't know.
I really like that big final lightsaber duel. I am always down for a good dramatic duel in a room that has no business being as big as it is. Yeah. Like, when I did see Star Wars when I was a little kid, what I retained the most
the lightsaber fights
is the architecture.
Interesting.
Yeah, just the insides of Empire spaceships is what stuck with me. The settings stuck with me. And I wasn't...
How lovely was Tarkin's office? It was so empty and bland. It was terrible. Anyways, continue.
Just like those massive dramatic spaces that do not exist in real life. Like, you know what a hallway is, but this is like a hallway times 20.
Wait, what's a hallway?
This is the granddad... This is the granddaddy of all hallways, and this is where they're going to fight. A super hallway. I don't know, something about that stuck with me as a kid, and now that's like what gets me the most still as an adult. Like, it took me a little while to really get into the show, and I think the first episode I was like, okay, yeah, I'm really on board with this, is the first episode where they sneak into an Empire spaceship. And I'm like, okay, the setting is where I want it to be. Like, I don't like desert planets. I like big, unnecessary corridors.
Where no one can have the higher ground.
Yeah, and there's just like a walkway in this huge empty space, and I don't know why there's a huge empty space in the middle of the spaceship, other than that you can fall into it.
I think it was one of their, like, engine rooms or, like, reactor rooms, so...
Who even knows?
Whatever.
But yeah, it gave me what I wanted out of Star Wars, which is, like, a high platform you can fall from.
Yep. Yep. That's cool. That's good. I had a lot of fun rewatching this.
Yeah,
that's good. I own all of the Clone Wars 6 seasons. I have the collector's edition for seasons 1 through 5, and then I have season 6 on Blu-ray.
Nice.
And I also have the, like, prequel Star Wars Clone Wars movie.
Yeah, the Genndy Tartakovsky one?
No. So he did a Clone Wars series, like, mini-series.
Okay.
And I guess, like, shortly after is when they started up the cartoon, but to kind of pitch it to get funding and stuff, they made it like a feature-length movie as like the first episode, and it's literally how Ahsoka and Anakin meet. and how they give their nicknames to each other, because
what are those?
He calls her Snips because she's really snippy and sarcastic, and she calls him Sky Guy. He's supposed to be this hot shot, cool dude. He's like, oh, okay, Sky Guy.
I really like that.
Yeah, but it's good. I don't have Rebels yet because obviously I have not seen all of it, so I'm hoping to catch up this next week or so and figure out what's happening, because I want to know so bad.
Yeah, I'll catch up with this at some point too.
For sure. Any final thoughts?
No, it was a good old time especially coming from me, somebody who does not really know very much about Star Wars. Like, you don't have to be a Star Wars fan to still get, like, it's a fun space action adventure series with a cute little colorful family.
Yeah, and space Aladdin.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Did this show make you more interested in Star Wars at all, or are you still just kind of, I like it, it's good?
I think a little bit more interested, because even sort of simplified the way it is for like a young adult TV series, those operatic notes
still
of
hit.
Star Wars, yeah, they still hit. Now, like, I need to go learn more about these on like a real, more mature operatic level, and they'll be even better.
Yeah. So the character, last thing from me, the character that they get a lot of their information from, Vizago, who's the dude with the two horns.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a pirate. In Star Wars Clone Wars, there is another character who is like that archetype of the like space pirate, and he's so much better. It's amazing. And he sounds like Antonio Banderas. It is great. He has this like,
that does sound good.
This like, I hesitate to say fake, but this like over extravagant Spanish accent, but while speaking English. So it's really funny. So go check out the Clone Wars too, because I absolutely love that show. It is fantastic. And there's 6 seasons, so you can binge all of it, and it's great. Good stuff. Go check out Star Wars Rebels, though. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know if the season that just ended was their last one, or if they still have one more or not. The show is
looking at
ending.
The episode title. Yeah, looking at the episode title, it sounded very much like a series finale, but I don't actually know.
They've announced their new show after this, called Star Wars Resistance. I forget exactly when it's taking place, but I think it is more closer to the newer movies that's coming out. Because I think there was an image of like a BB-8 style droid in there, so they're wanting to update things some and be like, well, let's, the kids have now seen all of these new movies, let's make them like that. So yeah, Star Wars Resistance, I believe, is what it's called. So hopefully that will be good too. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that about wraps us up for this discussion. We are about to decide what we are going to do for next week. And Melissa, it's your turn to pitch stuff. Uh-oh, she's grabbing her notes. I'm scared now.
I have a theme for these 3 pitches, and it is Heroes of the Midwest.
Heroes of the Midwest.
Yes. I don't have anybody from my home state of Missouri, but I have representatives from my neighbors Kansas, Iowa, and Illinois.
In a world where all the heroes come from the Midwest.
So, to represent Kansas is, of course, Clark Joseph Kent, our Superman.
Okay.
And for the Superman story, I have selected All-Star Superman, the graphic novel written by Grant Morrison and illustrated by Frank Quitely.
Yep.
And I saw the animated adaptation of this once, and it's a really interesting, kind of strange story.
It's
where
very good,
Superman...
too.
Yeah, like Superman, he knows his death is imminent, and it's like what he does with his last couple days on Earth.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was intrigued by it, and I'm really curious about the original source material, so we can read the All-Star Superman graphic novel.
Sure.
And pitch number 2, our hero from Iowa is James T. Kirk.
Okay.
And for him, I've selected the film Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to watch some of the original Star Trek TV series, but season 1 is 30 episodes long, and they're all an hour because TV was completely different in the 1960s. And I'm like, I have no way to break this down.
I mean,
let's watch one of the movies.
CW still does like 24 episode seasons, and they're all an hour long, so hasn't changed that much.
Yeah, this is a movie I think stands on its own pretty well. If you know the basic concept of Star Trek and the basics of who the characters are, that's all you really need to know. Essentially, this is about Khan, who is a villain from Kirk's past that comes back on a vengeance mission and demands something called the Genesis device, which will create an entire new planet because his planet got destroyed. So he's like, whatever scientific purposes you had for this thing, goodbye, it's mine now, I'm just making my planet again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And pitch number 3?
Representing Illinois, you don't have to be a giant space hero to still be a righteous dude. We are picking an everyday hero. We are picking Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Okay.
The John Hughes movie about a teen who does not want to go to school that day, and how he cons his girlfriend and his best friend into joining him on just a mad romp around Chicago.
Not all heroes wear capes. That's for sure.
Sometimes they just wear weird sweater vests.
Yeah. Oh man, I would actually be totally down to do Wrath of Khan because I haven't seen it yet. Namely because I never grew up on Star Trek, and so it's one of those things that, like, when I do a once I finally do a deep dive into it, I'm gonna watch like everything.
Yeah.
So I've like stayed away for the most part. But I feel like that'd be a little weird just after having done Star Wars something. So, not Wrath of Khan. And I know all the Star Trek fans out there are yelling at me and disowning me. Either Superman or Ferris Bueller.
They're so similar.
Yeah. Totally. Goodness gracious. Kind of want to do Superman. All-Star Superman.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Because I've seen the animated version as well, but it was a long time ago, and I remember liking it, but I don't remember it at all. So, and Grant Morrison is hit or miss. He's very meta.
Yeah, that's the impression I've gotten from like what I've heard about him.
If on your own time, you should go read Grant Morrison's run on Animal Man.
I've heard that is like legendary.
It is, and Paul and I did an episode of the previous iteration of this podcast. It's so hard to explain. Like it's a review show, but it's not the review show, and it's called the Whatnauts, but our company is the Whatnauts, but it's not the company per se. So our old podcast, which was just simply the Whatnauts, it was basically the review show. But we did an episode on Grant Morrison's run on Animal Man, and I think it's only like 24 issues. It was written late 80s, around like 87, 88-ish. But for being an older comic, it reads very fast, but it is incredibly meta. It's a mind fuck. It will. Yeah. Oh, dogs are going after the mailman.
Oh, they heard you say animal too many times.
Animals? Squirrels? Where? Who? But no, it's kind of a follow-up to Crisis on Infinite Earths too. So if you read Crisis and then go right into Animal Man, it works out really well.
Okay.
So yeah. Side note, but All-Star Superman. That's what we should read for this next week.
Good.
That being said, time for all the thingamabobs. Thank you guys for joining us this week. If you were on the live stream, we had some people earlier on that were asking us some stuff. So thank you guys for joining. You guys can watch us live every Sunday at noon Eastern time. And you guys can catch that at thewhatnauts.com/live streams. And if you could give us a follow on Twitch, that would be very lovely. If you missed the live stream, this will be up on YouTube and as a podcast the following week, so fret not. Go like, share, subscribe, do all the things you need to do. It helps us out a ton if you retweet our episodes or share them elsewhere. You can follow all the updates for this show on Twitter at The Whatnauts. And you can find me personally on Twitter at Hush315. Melissa, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Wilkywit, WILKYWIT.
Perfect. Go read All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison and Frank Quietly for this next week, and join us next time. This has been The Review Show. We will see you guys next week. Bye.
May the force be with you.